Okay.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay, first question to you guys, how many of us or how many of you guys are waiting for lunch? Seems not a lot of them. How many of you guys have already had a snack and then are here to take the afternoon nap? Okay, awesome. Good to know that everyone's alive and still kicking. So I will try to make this as interesting as possible. And I promise you one thing: this is not going to be a sales pitch, right? So you're not going to hear me telling you about how good Airtel ads is and why you need to work with us. I think that's quite apparent already. So I'm not going to do that. Thank you. So one of the topics that we thought could be interesting is how we have seen a lot of privacy regulations come in, and in India as well, you will have soon privacy regulations coming in, and a lot of changes in the ecosystem as well. So one of the topics that we want to talk about and where we think we can contribute as well is going to be about how brands should actually prepare for a privacy-first future, right? So just to give you some context, we all talk about GDPR. How many of you know what GDPR is? Can somebody give me a full form of GDPR? Go for it, anyone. IAB Tech Lab, you want to go for it? And regulation. Right? So what is GDPR, right? So just to give you some context in India, GDPR has set guidelines for collection and processing of personal information from individuals in the EU. It's not applicable in India. We don't have a fully flushed out data protection policy as yet, right? But it's already been proposed by a private member. It will come out probably in the coming session. It might come in as soon as an act, right? But it's also something that's happening all across the world, not just in Europe as well. In California, you already have something called CCPA, which is already active, right? It's happening all across the world where because of the misuse of cookies and because we have not handled customer concerns very well, now government has to step in and then come out with regulations to protect consumer privacy, right? Which is why we're having this. And in addition to this, you have, because of this fallout, you also have Google basically, which announced that third-party cookies will be phased out. I think that's a story which I'm sure every one of you in the crowd would have already heard about this, right? In addition to this, there's two more things that are coming in. iOS users, they will need user consent to deploy IDFA as well within their apps. Android as well, I think, is coming up with more regulations as well. So the ecosystem is starting to tighten up, right? If you look at it, 85% of the US internet users are concerned about data privacy. 76% of US consumers are concerned about how their social media companies use their data. If you've installed the latest version of Android, you will know by app how many people actually collect data about you, how many apps are actually listening to what you say, and that's how magically you see ads coming up as well, right? You're just talking about something and suddenly you see an ad coming up, right? So, and how many of them actually take our permission to do that? Right? So that's something that's happening as well. Now, let's come back to India, right? So something that's going to come in and that's going to affect all our lives is the Personal Data Protection Bill. It was presented in the Parliament in 2019. Now, there are 2-3 requirements that are key, we felt. One is that law would impose data collection requirements, mandating all critical data be processed, and it would be collected, stored, disclosed, and shared in India only, right? Which is not happening with a lot of publishers, right? Data still goes back to US servers, etc. Personal data can be only processed with explicit consent. Now, this consent, so for example, if I'm a user, if I go to a website, I need to basically declare what I'm going to be using that data for, and it might change each time. So that if the end use is going to change, I need to get consent every time, right? So that is something that the publisher ecosystem needs to prepare for. And the last one is that any data cannot be retained beyond a particular period of time, right? So that is something the bill will come up with. And I think in Europe, I think it's close to 2 years or 3 years where you post that you can't have data. In fact, I was in Europe before, and somebody had my data, so I received we received a mail from the publisher themselves saying that, hey, you know what, we have your data. Do let us know if you still want to continue it. You give us permission, otherwise we'll go and be deleting it, right? So you need to be active and you need to be dynamic and you need to have the tech to be able to record consent every time and to be able to delete the data once it goes away. Now, what are the challenges for us? Right? You know that as all digital marketers here, we have all of our targeting is currently based on consumer behavior in the in-app environment and the web. What we need to do is everything is based on cookies right now. So cookies seems to be the magic word. We're talking about in cookies as well. You have multiple types of cookies, which is third-party cookies and then first-party cookies. It's just the third parties that are going away, but first-party cookies as well. You need to be able to work with the publisher to be able to help monetize that, etc. We have heard a lot of publishers as well as brands on the stage talking about how they are building their first-party data as well. It's easier said than done, right? It takes a tremendous amount of effort, technology, and the capital to be able to invest and build first-party data, right? And we are starting now. All the brands we're speaking to are doing it over the last 2-3 years, right? And they're not even scratched the surface. Consumers are desiring more customization while looking for data privacy. Now, consumers are not averse to sharing data. As long as you gain their trust about what you want to use that for data, and you are keeping them informed about what you're going to do with that data, right? If you come and tell me that, hey, I want to use that data to help you give more relevant ads or relevant content, then I'm happy to share my data, right? But if I don't have that trust, and if I'm going to misuse that data, and to be able to keep on bombarding you with more ads or content which is not relevant, then obviously you are going to take it away, right? So how do we become more dynamic as an ecosystem to protect the rights of consumers? How do we get that balance between a consumer wanting to have things tailor-made for him, at the same time, how do we get that balance between just making sure that his data does not go out of the ecosystem, right? So how do we drill the balance is something that every publisher in the ecosystem needs to figure out, right? So I think hopefully in the next 6 months, we're going to say bye-bye to intrusive ads. Once you go to a website, you see hundreds of ads being plugged in. Hopefully all this will go away. If not, the customer is going to make it go away, right? What could be potential solutions, right? I'll come. I've ranked this in preference of what I think is going to be the way ahead for the ecosystem. I think you already heard about unified ID, so I'm not going to go into detail about this. I think clean room tech is one of the latest innovations. I think that's going to change the world, right? Lot of publishers and brands are starting to build their own tech stacks and data stacks. To be able to come up with one identity solution across all publishers, across all first-party data, etc., is something that's a utopian dream, right? It's not going to happen today. It's going to take some time, but I think there have been some initiatives on that. That's what the Unified ID project is about. What I think is something that adds a lot of value to both publishers and to advertisers is if you can get a clean room. Think about it this way, right? Think about Flipkart, which has shopping data about users, which has, just giving Flipkart as an example. I don't know if they're in the room though. So if they have shopping data and say we have location data, right? What if these two data sets could combine, right? And we're able to deliver an ad to somebody at the right time. Ad is great as long as it's delivered to the right person at the right time, right? And if it's relevant, right? Ads are good. Ads are not bad. I don't know if we have heard of the ad, daag achhe hote hain, right? Same thing is ads achhe hote hain as long as you don't basically bombard them and make it irrelevant, right? So if we can build that technology, which is why Airtel has also invested in a clean room technology called Achilles, right? It's blockchain based, where we are recording user consent, and we're also basically through the entire chain, where two first-party data sets can basically interact in a clean room environment, right? And we are able to build a cohort, anonymized, no PII being shared. That data then can be applied back into for a media activation, and then once the purpose is done, the data is deleted. It's gone, right? So that's something super interesting because that way it's secure, it's scalable, right? It allows for multiple first-party data sets to be dynamic, and it can go back to its original source without having to interact. There is no data enrichment. There's nothing, right? That I think is going to be for me number one when it comes to what solutions could be there. Unified ID, I think you've heard enough. I think it's a great initiative by IAB. I think IAB Tech Lab is also here as well. I think it's a great solution, but I think it's going to take some time. I think there are still concerns that publishers have when it comes to like, hey, if I basically share my data with a unified ID solution, is there a way that can still be traced back that data? Do I want to set it up for leakage, etc. Right? How do we protect that? So I think there are some concerns that need to be addressed, but that could be a potential solution. Third one is contextual. I think we're going back 10 years back. If a brand says they want to go back to contextual solutions, we're going back. Contextual solution was there way before we had everything else coming in. So for me, these are potential solutions that I think that the industry is looking at, and I think for me, number one is going to be the clean room solution. What's way ahead? I think every publisher wants to monetize their data, but I think I was in the Unilever panel. I mean, when Unilever was talking as well, I asked the same question: how much are brands willing to pay for data? Right? Everybody wants CPMs to go down, and they want first-party data, but they don't want to pay for it. Right? So I think every brand needs to recognize that first-party data doesn't come cheap, and data should be paid based on what quality it drives for you and what the outcome it drives for you. Right? So I think it's great if brands can actually disclose like, hey, I'm going to give you X number of leads, but instead of telling me how many leads I can, tell me how much it impacts your bottom line. Then we'd be happy to have that discussion. I think there's innovative solutions which are deep focus on customer data privacy and ethics need to be incorporated in product journeys as well. I think that's something that's missing across the ecosystem. We have started to work on it a lot. We are making sure that every part of our customer journey in our digital ecosystem as well as our TV ecosystem that we have, privacy is part of it, right? And that's something that we are constantly working on. Scale is important, but I think relevance is more important, which is where data comes in, right? Everybody talks about, hey, you know what? We have X billion impressions. We have few 100,000 people that will come to our website, etc. Great. But what's the point if I don't know anything about them? What's the point if I can't rely on that data to be able to hit the right KPIs? I think it's great. The brands, Unilever said that CTR is not important to me. Amazing, right? I don't know how many brands here who want to pay us based on cost per install, cost per click, etc. Let's make that all go away, right? That's great, and pay us only on outcomes, right? But I think relevance is very important, right? So I think these are way ahead for the industry, but I think it's looking bright. I think we as an industry are working with each other to figure out what could be potential solutions that all of us can take back home. And yeah, there is no one solution, as I said, but I think this could be probably something that we need to think of. That's it from my end, but we have 2 minutes left. I didn't want to make this a very heavy session, but happy to take any questions that you guys might have. I'll go.
Hi. Congratulations on the Achilles tie-up. G-Man's doing some great work in blockchain technology. My question in that context was, so if first-party data sets are matched, I mean, do you think blockchain is the way to go, or would you rather collaborate parallelly with other publishers, or to get first-party data, or do you think blockchain is the next step for everyone to get into?
Blockchain is just an addition to a tech layer where we are recording a particular sequence of events and we are having as a proof, right? It's like an audit. That's the only thing that blockchain does. As an ecosystem, I can speak for Airtel what we're building. We are not building a closed ecosystem. We are building a transparent, open ecosystem that brands can come, verify, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we are flexible and we are able to give brands the flexibility to figure out multiple ways of transacting, right? The industry is evolving, as you know. 6 months in ad tech is equivalent to 3-4 years in any other industry, right? But I think these could be potential solutions that we think we are prioritizing from our end. IIB Tech Lab.
Yeah, we'll take this as the last question. Yes, sir.
I can't stop myself. Sorry. So, isn't the data, when you talk in your last slide, relevance? The context of the data also becomes very important. So, if I have given my data or has been collected when I was buying a soap, you can't sell me biscuit. Is that a possibility?
Come again? Sorry.
I had shared my data, or my data was collected in the context when I was buying a soap. You can't push a biscuit to me. Though I might be a biscuit, there may be a high correlation between a biscuit and a soap user.
So, if I have collected, let's assume that I have collected your data for a particular campaign or a particular use. I have to declare it to you when I am basically collecting your consent. Post getting your consent, I cannot target you for something else. For example, if you go inside in a website and you put in your name for a contest, right? And the contest is done. Now the brands cannot use your data to target you for something else. They need to ask your consent again, right? Right now, that's not the case.
But that brings us to a formidable challenge that, as an industry, that we are going to face, because this utopian world where we could do anything is going away, and from buyers to everybody, you have to be very conscious, and especially if you had a multi-brand or an ecosystem that you are leveraging, it would become more Chinese wall fragmented in terms of how you are possibly going to use.
Correct. But at the same time, we can't take one blanket approval for everything.
So now that comes to the question. I think the innovation is going to come. How do we take that consent?
Absolutely. Exactly. I think that's where the tech has to come in and figure out how do we make it dynamic and how do we make it non-cumbersome for the user as well. That every time he has to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to take your data for this. I'm going to take your data for this. Right?
And possibly collaboration between all of us too to figure that out.
Correct. I think if you address publisher concerns, I don't think collaboration is a challenge. Right? End of the day, I think as brands, we ourselves are a large advertising brand ourselves, and we do want to reach users, right? We also acquire users before we make them available for advertising ourselves. So I think collaboration is the way to go. But yeah, that's it.
All right. So well on that. Yes, sir. That's it. But let's have a round of applause to also thank Vignesh. Thank you so much.